Alan Williams, the former state representative, worked in the 2020 presidential campaign of the Housing and Department of Urban Development, has tapped Alan Williams, a former member of the Florida House of Representatives, for a key post. Williams was named Deputy Assistant Secretary for Intergovernmental Relations in the Office of Congressional and Intergovernmental Relations. Alan Williams has served in the legislature from 2008 to 2016, at which point he was term limited. During his time in the House, he chaired the Florida Legislative Black Caucus and worked as House Democratic Whip from 2012 to 2016. He later ran unsuccessfully for Leon County Supervisor of Elections. He has worked since 2017 as government relations consultant for MEON regulatory and legislative attorneys. During his political career, Williams has served as Secretary of the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, a member of the White House Legislators Working Group on Middle Class Economics. The National Black Caucus of State Legislators in 2014 named Alan Williams as its National Legislator of the Year. Alan Williams has also held seats on many advisory boards, including Leadership Florida, Leadership Tallahassee, Bethel Community Development Corporation, Board of Directors, the Leon County chapter of the Florida A&M University National Alumni Association, and the City of Tallahassee Airport Advisory Board. We are so delighted to have, once again, Deputy Assistant Secretary Alan Williams as a luncheon keynote speaker. Enjoy your lunch and be empowered by this great presentation. Thank you.
Well, good morning, or in some places, I guess, good morning here in Huntsville, but good morning, good afternoon, other parts of the country, in the world for that matter. As Keith said, my name is Alan Williams, and I'm honored to be with you today as you discuss very, very important issues as it relates to infrastructure, energy, opportunity zones, and really just overall community development. I bring you greetings on behalf of the President of the United States and on behalf of the 18th Secretary of the Department of Housing and Urban Development, Secretary Marshall Fudge. You know, at HUD, one of the things that the Secretary always encourages each and every one of us to focus on as appointees, a part of his administration, is to get out and tell the story and the work that we are doing at HUD each and every day. One of the most critical and important issues that we're facing, obviously, is how do we help increase the number of affordable homes in our country, in your community, and obviously throughout the states that make up this great union. And with that, I will tell you that the Secretary is laser focused on the issues that are presented before us. Whether it's getting additional funding to state finance housing boards across the country, we've increased the housing tax credit, streamlining regulations, and as well as looking at how do we build housing of the future, not just the houses that our grandparents lived in, but houses of the future. As we all know, the home ownership gap between Blacks and whites is the same as it was in the 1960s as it is right now. And so we know it's critically important that we take all of the necessary steps and measures to address this. And, you know, how do we do that? Well, it's partnering with folks like yourself. It's going in, it's encouraging new innovation in our housing supply. It's focusing on, you know, as the Secretary liked to say, the appraisal process. And we know that when we look at the appraisal process, The Secretary and Ambassador Rice were tasked by the president to look at just that. And through the PAVE report, we have come up with a set of recommendations that we hope many of you, when you get a chance, take a look at and see how you can implement those, whether it's in our bustling metropolises or in some of our rural communities. We know that 97% of the appraisal workforce are those who are not of color. So that means only about 3% of our property appraisals around the country are Black or brown. And so why is that important? Well, it's important because when you go and you do the appraisals, and we've seen studies that show, and there's legislation that's out there that show that there are times where, because of the ownership of the house, that appraisal may come back less than that of, say, their white counterpart. Same house, in some cases, same community, same neighborhood, but because it's because of the makeup of, or the demographic of the ownership, it's valued less. Why is that important? Well, you take, for example, a home that's appraised at, just say, $25,000 less than it's supposed to be over a 4-year period, the same time that President Biden is completing his first term as president. You have now lost, based on appraisal, $100,000 in value. That's $100,000 less that you have to go out and start a new business, put your child or children through college, that you can take that money out and take out a home equity loan and do things that all Americans across the country look to do as they try and build equity in their homes. And that's one of the greatest transfer of wealth, or lack thereof, that happens in our communities. So the Secretary and the Domestic Policy Council are laser focused on working on curing that. And so we welcome the opportunity to work with many communities around the country. Take a look at the PAVE report, PAVE, Google that, go to our website, HUD.gov, and get more information. Now, what else are we doing at HUD? As Secretary like to say, it's a new day at HUD, and we're focused on the work that she just completed. She was recently in another HBCU. She was at the AUC Center in Atlanta, Georgia, meeting with college presidents that make up the AUC Center. And one of the things that we talked about was, obviously, we know on our HBCU campuses, a lot of them have now had an increase in population from when the pandemic started till now. A lot of that was born out of the uprising that we saw across our country due to the horrific tragedy of our brother George Floyd in Minneapolis. But it's also a reimagining of what the work that our HBCUs are doing across the country, like right here at Alabama A&M. And so we look to work with those individual schools and universities on how we can work with the cities that incorporate them, that they're a part of, and making sure that they leverage an unprecedented amount of resources that have come down since COVID, since the pandemic started. Whether you take the CARES Act money, the COVID money, the infrastructure bill that was passed that the president was able to get through Congress, or you look at the Inflation Reduction Act, or also you look at the jobs bill. All of those resources that are coming into our communities are ways that we know that we'll be able to add to the housing stock. We know right now in America, we are about 1.8 million affordable homes shy of where we really need to be. And the total is about 3 million. And so we need to build quality homes, affordable homes for the Americans throughout this country, to make sure that we stay in line with where we need to be. Now, I know you've heard from some very significant leaders in our community. I know my good friend, I believe, Laura Hall, who is the incoming president of the National Conference of Black State Legislators, which I was fortunate to be a member of when I was in the State House in Florida. I'm sure you've enjoyed some of the conversations that you're going to have from our counterparts at the United States Department of Agriculture. But know this, know that we at HUD look at the totality of government. We've been tasked by the President Biden, to look at the issues that are affecting our community, not in a silo, but as a unified team. This past weekend, many of you probably went out to a lot of different college football games and saw your favorite NFL teams either win or lose yesterday. Unfortunately, my Cowboys did not prevail. Oh. But nonetheless, we look at the work that we do in the administration as a team of one. And that's what the president has tasked us with. Whether you are a cabinet secretary or a special advisor, whatever your role may be, how can we do government more efficiently, but how can we do it more collectively? And so we're at a very critical time, not only because we're coming out of a pandemic, but because we are engaging our communities in a different way. And so I would tell you, as you go through this conference, whether you're virtual or whether you're in person or what have you, dare to think differently, dare to innovate, dare to question, dare to stimulate others' ideas around infrastructure and creating new communities in our country. Dare to be those, as John Lewis would say, those of good trouble. But be good trouble as it relates to how do we create new opportunities for those communities that have been left behind. Dare to be those instigators, if you will, for new research, new ideas. Dare to really be provocateurs of issues that sometimes get swept under the rug. And when you do all of this, when you dare to be great, when you dare to be a collective unit, a collective body at this conference, and when you leave this gathering, dare to not allow this this program to stay on the shelf. Don't be those individuals that are thankful that they got the information and not share it with others. As my pastor would say, don't be obese with the knowledge that you receive here. Go out and share it with others. And when you do that, we know that hopefully the information that you're getting here, like you got last year, and you will gather next year, will be information that doesn't just sit on the shelf. It's not just another great research opportunity, but it's an opportunity to really take and move our communities forward. So I want to share with you just real briefly some of the things that we are proud of and the things that we've been doing at HUD and that we think are critical to moving the needle forward. This past year, we've worked diligently to reinforce and broaden the federal housing safety net for people in need. The Secretary has advanced the housing equity as a way of improving choices and greater economic opportunity. And what do I mean by that? Not only have we focused on the appraisal process, but we're also looking at how do we work with, especially our students coming out of our HBCUs and other colleges and universities, how can we get them into home ownership? And so you may have seen middle of last year where the Secretary announced that they were going, when you look at the debt to equity ratio on Fannie and Freddie Mae and Freddie Mac's loans, that the first 40,000 that students have in their loans are not counted toward their debt to equity ratio. And for many, that's a big difference. That's a big issue. And now the president has gone even further to forgive many of those student loans that are out there. And so what's critical about that is that we are now trying to get individuals into homes that otherwise could not have done it. And when you think about the work, think about that for a second. You think about those who go out and rent a home, and rent an apartment, sometimes in communities where they're renting for $1,500, $1,600, maybe twice that. Those are individuals that definitely are credit worthy and can go in and purchase that first home or that forever home in some cases. And so those are some of the things that we're looking at. As you know, HUD administers over more than 200 housing programs, and our agency's priority goals are to reduce homelessness, remove lead-based paint hazards, and you've seen that with the work that the Secretary has done across the country, most recently in the Baltimore, Maryland community. Enhanced rental assistance. We know that during the pandemic, we were able to keep folks in their homes, in their communities, due to the rental assistance that they were able to receive. We want to promote economic opportunity for HUD-assisted residents. And most of all, we want to continue focusing on the efforts of the president to bring us out of this pandemic stronger and better than before we went into it. And so we're proud that we were able to move almost 6 million Americans to 2 million delinquent homeowners impacted by COVID-19 through our forbearance programs and other programs. We implemented and streamlined tools to support sustainable, affordable home ownership through the Federal Housing Administration. And we've also re-implemented funding for our HBCUs, most notably, most recently, Texas Southern and Howard University being the recipients of those awards. And right now there's actually a NOFO that is out on the streets that universities are applying to. So again, it's a new day at HUD, and we're proud of the leadership and the work that our Secretary Marcia Fudge is doing, and is committed to ensuring transparency and accountability of the funds that the public and Congress have entrusted to us. We will continue to identify and improve on our challenging areas while exercising sound fiscal management. Our agency, through the leadership of Secretary Fudge, is committed to sound fiscal management, and which we believe has resulted in an unmodified audit for the second consecutive year. So that means we're good stewards of the money that we bring, that we receive. And while each year brings new challenges, I'm definitely a firm believer and dedicated to the work that we have to do here at HUD each and every day. And so on behalf of the Secretary, thank you for this opportunity to be with you. I hope you are still enjoying your lunch. I will say that Keith didn't provide me lunch, but we're gonna fix that in a few minutes. But seriously, as I close, I just want to remind you, the work of rebuilding our communities after the pandemic is not just left to the 535 men and women that make up the United States Congress. It's not left up to the governors of our great states. It's not even left up to the person who I call my boss, Secretary Fudge, or President Biden and Vice President Harris. It's up to each and every one of us. It's up to each and every one of us to dare to be a part of the solution. We can find a lot of ways to find problems and question the system, but it's a lot harder to find the solutions to those problems. So dare to be one of those individuals that looks to find the solution to the problems that impact our communities, whether they be in our metropolises or in our rural and urban communities. So as I close, focus on innovation, focus on community development, but most of all, focus on the opportunity you have before you to dare to be better than you were the day before. And when you do that, I'm confident that each and every one of you collectively will make our country a better place for all of us to live, work, and play. Thank you so much, and God bless America.
Ladies and gentlemen, I want to echo the intentionality the intentionality for individuals, whether it be from Chicago or, you know, Montgomery or Washington, DC, who fly in to this great state of Alabama because we're committed to rural economic development. We're committed to minority businesses. We're committed to innovation and advancing it across the nation. First of all, let me say once again, thank you, Deputy Assistant Secretary Williams, Alan Williams. You have been an encouragement. I say that from an industry perspective as a small minority business who's been working in this field for 21 years. Knowing what it's like on the side to be a contractor trying to get work out of various agencies, including HUD. Thank you for being that encouragement. Not only for you being here, giving us your time with the keynote for the luncheon, but also making yourself available as you're here to learn more and learn about the conversations going on that HUD you can bring back to Washington and also bring to the boardroom and the secretary so that we can continue to be intentional to do good trouble of advancing our community's well-being post-pandemic. If there are any questions as you enjoy your lunch, we will entertain them. I will start by just asking what's top of mind, Secretary, just to Deputy Assistant Secretary, to in HUD's focus around rural development and housing. Can you tell us a little bit more about your knowledge of what you've seen in your 2 years now in this administration? What HUD can do more of, be better at relative to working with other agencies to create economic development prosperity, to bring people from housing authority to home ownership to full productivity with high wage earning capacities, and how our HBCUs can be a part of that. That's not a trick question, it's my only question, if you wouldn't mind.
Well, thank you for that question, Keith. I think, one of the things that I think is critical to addressing the relationship between HBCUs and HUD, and really the entire administration. Recently, many of you who may be on this virtually were in Washington, DC, and participated for the first time in person on the White House initiative on HBCUs. That is, and I'm a product of the HBCU. I'm a FAMU graduate. And so I understand the nexus between resources and opportunity. And many of you were in DC and we've talked about that. And so I'm delighted to tell you that the Secretary is committed to strengthening that relationship between our HBCUs and HUD. We have, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, we have re-implemented the funding that we had in the previous budget for HBCUs, and we're committed to extending that as well. And that not only is for HBCUs, but also for some of our HSIs as well. And so we know that when Black and brown communities do well, America does well. And at the bedrock of many of those communities are HBCUs. And so the work that Howard University and Texas Southern, who received the first awards, they're partnering. They're not just keeping that to themselves. They're partnering with other institutions. I know that, for example, Howard is partnered with Spelman and Bowie University, two phenomenal HBCUs. Texas Southern has done the same in their partnership. And so as they address some of the issues that are impacting our community from housing affordability, they are reaching out to find out the best and brightest minds in our research universities to understand how we can better serve our communities. Because we don't have all the best ideas in the HUD building or in our regional offices, sometimes it takes those folks who dare to ask those questions and dare to be instigators of research to give us that information that they're learning from the ground up. And so that's just some of the ways that we're committed to doing that. But we're also, Keith, focused on partnering with other agencies to find out, where we can build on those commonalities, but also break down those walls that a lot of our communities are faced with. A lot of times government is so large, especially at the federal level, that you can get lost. And so we want to be that North Star, if you will, that allows them to say, okay, how do we navigate through this bureaucracy? How do we navigate through these individual agencies and do it in a way that doesn't take multiple years to get an answer or get a solution to a problem? Because Americans can't wait, especially Black America and our Hispanic brothers and sisters. They can't wait years. And so we know that we have a very finite amount of time in this administration to do the work of the entire United States, all Americans. But we, in particularly, are challenged by our president to look at it through a diversity and equity lens and make sure that communities that have been left behind and underserved are given their fair share and their opportunity to benefit from the resources of the federal government in a way that is one in a way that they really haven't in a long time. And so we're thankful that we've been given this opportunity to redirect the ship that was that hadn't been really moving in the right direction the past 4 years. And so we now have an opportunity to redirect a ship that we believe, when it's moved in the right direction, that the entire American country, all Americans win, not just a select few. Thank you.
With that, I want to thank, first of all, our sponsors. I want to thank the City of Montgomery for being here with us. I want to thank Govology, our partner. You're going to learn much more about that and how it's going to very much so benefit each and every one of your businesses. And it's going to also tap into what we believe is what works for government when it comes to the acquisition process. I want to acknowledge, particularly now, here with having HUD as one of our representing bodies, MIT Modular, and the opportunity that they will have in their presentation to show you what innovation looks like in the housing. And I'm excited about what this means to every HBCU, because literally in your classroom, given conversations that are being had in this type of summit on innovation, on agriculture, on energy, not just opportunity zones, but opportunities. This has to shake up the classroom. This must prepare our students to become what is called the future of work, or 21st century workforce. It has to be the laboratory of inspiring innovation at a level that creativity becomes a confident character within each and every Black and brown and all students. And we as adults, starting that first, parents, most of us, if not grandparents, have a responsibility, and certainly as entrepreneurs, to carry on, pass on the baton of learning in a new environment. And so we're so excited to be here with you at the IAEOZ Summit, because we're fully committed. So committed that we've invested in, as you now know, the Hoover community online. This conversation only begins here, but will allow you the privilege, the opportunity on demand, 24/7. Some people, whether they can't sleep or whether they're in Hawaii and Pacific Coast time or wherever they are around the world, will be able to engage in those who have set up their profile. And you now will have another level of interactivity that you didn't have before, and we're thankful for that. And lastly, as we continue to thank our sponsors, in closing, we couldn't do it without you. There would be no us without you. And so we'd like to, for the next few minutes, allow you to enjoy your lunch, breaks, and we'll take our orders from our production team as to what's next. So
Sure.
Melvin, please take it
And
away.
one last thing, if
I
you
see
want
one
to,
question in the chat. How is HUD working with community development corporations to improve housing, living conditions in housing depressed areas, communities? Sounds like an opportunity zone question or a promise zone or a what HUD's doing now. One more time.
Well, thank you so much for that question. As many of you know, at HUD, we've had throughout the history of HUD, we've had a number of different major initiatives that stimulate our economy, our communities. And one that we're extremely proud of, that's going on now, are our choice neighborhoods. I believe we just announced 4 communities across the country, in Raleigh, Durham, Knoxville, trying to remember off the top of my head the other 2 communities, but we just announced those choice neighborhoods. I believe, I want to say Toledo, but don't hold me to that. But nonetheless, we encourage our communities to go in, apply for the choice neighborhood planning grants. That's kind of the first step. And it looks at ways that you can take not only the resources that HUD can provide, but it challenges you as a community not to think about where what you need today, but think about what your community needs 20, 30 years down the road. There's a great quote that I love, and I'm a big sports person, by Wayne Gretzky. He talks about, don't skate to where the puck is, skate to where the puck is going. And so I believe that choice neighborhoods is one of those opportunities that allow communities to go where the puck is, where it's going, and where the community is going. In addition to that, we obviously are working and partnering with our housing authorities around the country. We have a number of initiatives that we are working through and fund our housing counseling agencies, Urban League, our friends, Mark Morial and our friends over at the National Urban League do a great deal of work across the country, providing quality housing counseling to those individuals looking for home ownership. But as it relates to our depressed communities, we are working with members of Congress, our mayors. My role as intergovernmental affairs is to make sure that our mayors and governors have the resources they need and the technical assistance they need to address some of these issues. And again, I go back to this unprecedented amount of money and resources that Congress has given out over the past 3 years since we've been impacted by the pandemic, to help reimagine what your community looks like. And not only are we looking for new homes, we're also looking at preservation of our housing stock that is already in place. What can we do to weatherize grandmother's house? What can we do to make sure that these communities are impacted with lead? How can we go back in and help correct some of that, those issues that are not only housing issues, but they're environmental issues. When those communities are impacted by these outdated technologies that we now know are cause to poor health outcomes, we have to do something about it. And so obviously we're working with our regional offices, we're working with our state offices, our field directors to go out and address these issues. And I will tell you that after going through the pandemic, a lot of our public housing developments, as they go through their REACT scores, that's now back online and with full thrust of the agency behind it, because there was a time where there was they didn't get those REACT scores done or REACT testing done but now that's changed. We're obviously doing that again. And so we're finding that there's areas that we need to do better in. But it also it's not just HUD, it's a collective spirit to do this together. And so please, if there are opportunities where we can work with you, work with your mayors, work with your governors, work with your city and county commissions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me. Alan.b.williams@hud.gov, ALAN.b as in boy, .williams@hud.gov. We look forward to hearing from you and working with you. And to a lot of my colleagues who are on from HUD, I know Gerald Bennett, who's in Richmond, Virginia. He leads our STEM cluster for the White House Initiative on HBCUs, is online and I believe watching, as well as Jackie Williams, who heads up our rural economic development at HUD, but is also the head, the lead for our economic development cluster, and is a proud Howard graduate, and has worked at a number of different HBCUs across the country. And we're proud of the leadership that she brings to bear. And then in our office of PD&R, Kennard Wright, who's my colleague on the White House Initiative, is the tip of the spear as it relates to the NOFO that is out on the street now for HBCUs to apply for and participate in. So again, we're committed to doing our part. We're committed to doing even more. It takes a great leadership of our secretary and our president, combined with the resources that Congress gives us to make sure that we do the great work that all of you want us to do. So we look forward to working with you in the future. And we're just an email or phone call away. Thank you so much. Have a great day and the rest of your conference.